Hey everyone, this is Chris McDonald with RunSignup, and we're gonna let a handful more people. I think people are still flooding in at the moment, so we'll give you guys a few more minutes to get in and get situated. I think that it slowed slightly in terms of people joining us. Pretty good crowd, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, and of course I say that, and a whole bunch more people just joined.
See if it increases if we turn off our videos.
Better?
Looking good, Todd.
As
All right.
good as that's gonna look, at least.
Yeah, we're live. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. We got Todd back on. He was having some slow internet. I think that's all resolved. So welcome everyone. This is the panel on modified in-person events and how races have been adapting. Real races have been adapting due to COVID-19 guidelines. I'm Chris McDonald with RunSignup. I also time and produce events in the Southeast. And I'm going to give a super quick intro into our panelists. And before I do, I want everyone to know that on the right-hand side of your screen, on the GoToWebinar control panel, there is a questions tab. And we have a couple of people monitoring that. And unlike in previous sessions where they've been possibly giving you answers in that questions box, the idea here is that we really want to engage the panel with these questions. So Matt Avery, who is on the race day team, is going to be manning that and monitoring those questions. And that way, if anything that is really pertinent to some of the kind of stock topics that we're planning on chatting about pop up, we can jump in and discuss those in greater detail. And so without further ado, we have Todd with TNH Timing. You guys have seen a lot of him this week. He won the Alan Jones Award. And he's been in the business for about 19 years, has about 200 events annually, and is in the Midwest, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Ohio area. We have Steve with Race Day Professionals. They have, they're down in South Florida, so they have a very different COVID climate right now. And he's been involved in the industry for about 15 years, started his company about 5 years ago. We have Raul with RunFar. He's been in for 24 years. He's out of Texas, mainly the Dallas-Fort Worth area. They do have some satellite campuses in Indiana, Kentucky, and Louisiana. And I think that they just joined on the board of Running USA. So congrats on that. And then we have Amanda with Race Day Events, who is the director of timing operations. They have they own 26 of their own events. They're involved with around 350 or more other events, and they're kind of based nationwide, but specifically in Madison, Wisconsin. So welcome to the panel. And with that being said, I'm just going to start in on a baseline question of, what type of modified in-person events have you held so far? And if you can just describe what you have held and if there were any size limitations or restrictions put in place. So we'll go ahead and start in with Steve and let you start. So.
Well, other than the typical driveway 5Ks, which I do almost every weekend, we did put together an event in early May, which we did, of course, on RunSignup, and it was a free event for the community I live in and the community adjacent to us. And the only limitation was, we didn't really do any marketing. So whoever saw the signs around the neighborhood, we just wanted to keep it low key for a lot of reasons. We didn't know what was going to work and what wasn't going to work. And of course, the safety of the people that were showing up. We didn't want to make a big deal about it. But other than that, we haven't really delved into too many other things just yet. Our climate, as Chris kind of mentioned, has been challenged. The COVID down here is pretty bad. So, we don't want to encourage too many people to come by and do any of these things. So I'll stop there.
All right, Raul.
Yeah, so we're fortunate to have a little global running day 5K that we timed, and that was on June 5th, and that was our first timed event since the shutdown. And it turned out great. It was a small local event in Mansfield, and we had about 90 runners. We had about 110 sign up and another 15 or 20 sign up virtually. And it was great. We had the start finish line open for 12 hours from 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. And it was hosted by our local running store, Run United. And I've got some stuff I can share about it later, but it was turned out great, and people just showed up, picked up their bib. We did dynamic bib assignment, contactless bib assignment, picked up their bib and went for a run and came back. And it was on a marked course because there's a park right next to the running store. So it turned out a lot better than anticipated. It was before our 500 person limit that came out, so it was kind of under the radar, but not a big deal. It was just kind of a community run, timed workout type of thing. But it went well.
What about you, Amanda?
We've timed a couple of events now. First weekend of June, we did a 5K, 10K, and they did the socially distanced start line was open for 4 hours. They sent 4 people every 2 minutes. And then just last week, we did a trail race that's now an owned event for us. It's a 6-race series, and that one was right around 50 people. We'll max it out around 150. Same thing there. It's a long start time, wave starts, 10 people every 10 minutes. And then we actually time and host our first aquathon in about 7 hours.
Awesome. How about you, Todd? You made a bigger splash than anybody, so
Yeah,
some people might not have heard about it yet.
Yeah, we've actually had 3 events. Our first one was in May. I forget what the actual date, but and we started that one off with very limited number of starts. We did 10-minute windows. I think we were open for 3 hours on our start. We had 200 some people. And we've done 2 other subsequent events. We had one last Saturday. And what we've been doing is we've been slowly opening up the time slots and the number of people that we can have. So our first event, I think we had 10-minute time slots, maximum of 14 people per time slot. And what we found was there was never anybody at the start line at any one time. It was just people filtered in and out. So the next one, I think we opened it up to 25 every 10 minutes. Our last one, we did 50 every 15 minutes, and we still found that people were able to come in and go. There was never anybody waiting to start. The start line was always available for when people were ready to go. And same with the finish. People finished and moved in and out of the park. So, we've been slowly trying to expand that. Our next race, we actually have our first timed event for a customer Saturday. They're going to just have an open start. It's going to be a small 100-person 5-mile and 10-mile run, about 50 in each. So we're just going to try an open start for 15 minutes and see how that goes. And we expect that people will still, there won't be any crowding or anything at the start line. July 4th, we've got a couple races. Our town has decided to put on a race, so we're helping them with that. I think we've opened it up to 70-minute time slots, 15-minute time slots, 70 people at a time, I think is what we have that set for. And so it seems to be working really well. I don't, you know, we're cautiously expanding the number of people who can start at any given time. And I really, in my experience, the concern isn't really the start line. I mean, it is, you can't have people standing shoulder to shoulder. You just can't. And I personally don't think that you're going to have much success of even trying to have like 20 or 30 people standing at the start trying to start together, because if you have a gun, anybody that's ran a large marathon, you get the accordion effect. It goes off and everybody pushes forward and then stops and then pushes forward. So I think that we're going to continue with just the open start lines. But again, I think we're finding that you can have the number of people for each of those slots a little more aggressive than what we originally thought. The big thing is getting people in and out of the park, getting people from the parking lot to the start, to the packet pickup, to the start line. And so our major focus has been, when we expand these time slots, what does the packet pickup area look like? Are we having people waiting in line to get their packets? Because that's where I think we're going to probably have to put most people at risk. And again, to this time, we haven't seen, you know, we do packet pickup for 3 days. We're a running store, so we're able to have it open for 3 days. So we have about half the participants will pick up in advance throughout that time. And then, so we've had no issues. It's worked out extremely well.
So, Steve, with your packet pickups, have you had any issues with social distancing guidelines, or how are you alerting people, kind of to what Todd was saying, to the guidelines you're putting in place from packet pickup to the race start? Or are you doing everything on race morning?
Well, for our little event, there was no packet pickup because it was really trying to be very, very much under the radar. And much like Raul was saying, that we wanted to stay as low under the radar as possible for everyone's safety and just to make sure it was a good experience. But when participants arrived, we had a tent set up and we had tables where they could register on a touchscreen or check in using the check-in app on an Android tablet that we had. We had bibs set up that they could grab and scan with the QR code on the back of the tablet that was already configured to read the code. We had pins sitting right next to it, and after they did all that, there was hand sanitizer and the start line. So I think Amanda actually did something really, really good with the packet pickup thing, where once you got into the queue, you couldn't leave until you started the race. We didn't do that. I think that's a better way of doing it. Ours was you could come pick it up, and we encourage you to just continue along that path and start your run. But I like saying it that once you get your bib, you're running. That eliminates a lot of the misreads that you might get if someone picks up a bib, accidentally crosses a start, leaves, has breakfast, comes back 2 hours later, and then starts again. You have a 2-hour window where you now have those 2 reads. So I like Amanda's method better than what we did. That's one of the things we learned from doing this.
You know, Steven, my answer to those people is that's a you problem, not a me problem. If you grab your bib and go across the start and go to breakfast. Well, I'm so well loved in our running community.
Mind if I just interrupt really quick? We had a couple of people ask, because they joined the session later from a previous session, if you could all just say where you're located again.
Sure. I'm in Southern Florida, like the Fort Lauderdale area.
Raul?
Dallas, Texas.
Amanda?
Madison, Wisconsin.
Todd?
I'm in Northwest Indiana, just about 10 miles south of the tip of Lake Michigan.
And I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. So, yeah, and going back to what Steve was just saying about Amanda's event, we actually spoke about that in advance of their event and kind of took that concept from mud runs. A lot of mud runs, actually, the packet pickup process is part of the starting chute. And it was trial and error, partly because I put on a sample run and, your neighborhood race, and we had people show up 3 hours ahead, pick up their packet, go home, and they read, and they came back, and we had major issues with data cleanup. And for any of you race directors on that are not timers, that is something to consider. As a timer, it is challenging to clean up data where you're getting reads, like for tons of different reads that match specific gap factors. However, race day scoring did just come out with a I think everybody's played with it, and now this new tool is awesome, being able to find the other gaps that meet the requirements to more quickly assign better read windows. So Raul, what about your event that you did? Packet pickup, social distancing guidelines.
Yeah, so the same scenario really. The virtual people could come in and get their packet at the running store anytime, but the timed event, we waited and did it on race day, and I sent an email out to all the timed participants with the instructions, and basically was the same: pick up your bib and go run, and make sure you're not hanging out at the start finish line waiting for friends, or to start or to finish. And so we set up the start finish line about 25-30 yards away from the pickup area, which was outside all day. So they had some volunteers outside handing out bibs, checking people in through the check-in app, and then they would just go off and run. And race day scoring worked like it should, I guess. We synced the bib assignments throughout the day and uploaded, and it was connecting and uploading results throughout the day. Just as long as you've got your internet running and the equipment's running, you can let it run all however long you want, really.
Yeah.
So it went pretty smooth. We only had one participant, this poor 9-year-old, or I think he might have been 12, but he missed the turnaround, the U-turn, ended up running 4.5 miles instead of the 5K. He was all upset because it was like a 35-40 minute run, and he usually runs 27-28 minute 5K, and by God, he was going to have a 27 minute 5K that day. So he went, rested, came back an hour later and ran his 28 minute 5K. Like, okay, man. It's getting hotter, but
you do that.
You go for it. And really, that was the only issue we had. I mean, it worked pretty well. Yeah.
Awesome. Amanda, you want to fill in? I know I chatted a bit about your, and so did Steve, but how did yours start?
Yeah. So you guys have both kind of chatted about it, but I've been referring to it kind of as like a roller coaster line, right? Once you're inside the gates of the line of the roller coaster, you're going on the roller coaster, and you're going to get off the roller coaster, you're going to follow back around. So the start of that roller coaster was the entry to packet pickup. People were instructed to show up no more than 10 minutes before their wave time or their corral time, which they selected at registration. We did dynamic bib assignment. It was a 2.5 hour start window with all the corrals. So they would go up, they'd get their bib, hand sanitizer there. All of our staff wore masks at any point of interaction with athletes. And then they followed on through. We had a just barricaded corral. So they kind of followed through that line, started the race, finished the race, and then that finish line basically dumped them right out at the parking lot. So they kind of, throughout the whole event, they made just one big circle in order to avoid any sort of crossover or break any social distancing.
Gotcha. So moving on to more kind of safety related, in terms of, we had a question about masks. Were there any requirements? And some of this is kind of new only because I think it was yesterday or day before, North Carolina mandated masks in public. Yeah, Steve, you have to do, okay. So at least around where I am, these popping up, the mandates of masks popping up are kind of new. Number one, and we'll start with Todd, did you guys have to deal with anything mask related? And number two, on that kind of PPE safety side, how did you protect, or what did you do for your staff in terms of protection and safety?
We didn't have that. I just want to add one thing about the packet pickup and stuff, and not that
sure.
everybody doesn't have great ideas. But what we found was if we could spread people out enough, and our focus was to eliminate any lines. We didn't want people standing in a line. And so you had the parking lot, then we would have packet pickup in one section, the start was in another section, the finish was in another section. So people were continually moving, they could get their packet. And then we just barricaded off our start area. And if you look at the pictures that were on the blog, we have signs made up that said, do not enter, cannot enter. We have signs that say only participants beyond this point. But we were kind of taking the approach of kind of spreading them around and keeping them moving. We figured if they were walking from place to place to place, they wouldn't be congregating in one spot. So I just wanted to throw that in there. But we're lucky because we're in Indiana. We're technically a Chicago suburb. So we're right across the Illinois border. And so we can, like, I can stand out on my front porch and I can, look over there across the lake and laugh at them because their governor's insane. Indiana's taken a much better common sense approach, I think. So they do not mandate masks. They are requesting that people wear them in public, but right now we don't have any of those restrictions. All of our volunteers wore masks. Anybody that was working well, we didn't have volunteers. Everybody that works our events, we pay to work our events, so they're employees. But they all wore masks. I built plexiglass screens to go in front of the check-in computers where people were checking in. One thing that we decided to do is we do not do any race day registration at all on site. You can register. We obviously leave it open on RunSignup, so you can register at home before you get there. You can register from your personal device in the parking lot, but we didn't want to have computer screens or anything that people were touching. So the only people touching computers are our people, and we're checking them in behind the glass. But so far, we've not been impacted by that. The IHSAA has been starting to put out some guidelines for cross-country teams to practice. They are requiring that kids wear masks when they're not running, but not when they're running. So hopefully we won't get to that point. I don't know, how you get past that challenge if you're going to try to tell people to run in masks, especially in the heat, because it's more dangerous than getting to COVID. So, but that's what we've done.
What about and we'll move to Steve next. What about any temperatures checked or anything like that? Any hand sanitizer in extra spots or?
We have hand sanitizer. My wife bought like cases of hand sanitizer and wipes before this all hit for our event. So we have hand sanitizer at the check-in. I personally don't. I think you're putting more people at risk if you're trying to have people take their temperature than you are. It's an endurance event. Most people who have a fever are not going to go out and try to run a 5K. So we've not dabbled in that. I don't think we will unless we are absolutely required to.
Cool. Well, so Steve, what about you on both the PPE for your staff, volunteers, and any other safety precautions that you guys might have taken?
Staff was usually mostly my family, but we did have a couple other members of the team come by to kind of see the rolling start setup that we were doing, and they had to have masks, so we did have gloves if they wanted to use that. That's not been a requirement. We did put messaging out to the few people that did register for the event ahead of time that you have to follow all the guidelines that are in place regarding using PPE and social distancing. We used RaceJoy for the course, so Raul mentioned that we had a runner go too long. I was worried about that. I couldn't mark a course. I didn't want to, infringe on that, so that's how we did that. I failed to mention about the social distancing at our packet pickup / start area. We have a sidewalk, cement sidewalk that segments, and each segment is 6 feet. So we just said stand on the lines, which was great, but sadly we didn't have enough people to actually get into any of that. One thing I did notice, it seems consistent and mostly on what Todd had shared, the start, it didn't seem to be a problem with the rolling start. We had ours open from 7 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. for the 15 or 18 people that actually showed up. But at the end, a lot of people came together, like 2 people come and they ran together, and then they came and they saw somebody else that they knew from the community, and they decided to stick around and talk. And we were like really happy, and they were like, wait, no, we don't want this. We don't want to encourage them to hang out. So our staff stayed well away, 6 to 8 feet away from the people. We all know them. They're from our communities, right? So we were talking with them, and we were trying to stay away and kind of show them the distancing, but it was hard. And I think Todd may have run into that, and I'm sure the larger events that have happened probably run into that as well, that you see people that you know and you haven't seen in so long that they just want to hang out and talk. It's kind of a human thing, But PPE is a requirement. Any time we did interact, we had the masks on for sure. And of course the gel, the hand sanitizer, as much as we can find. Hey Todd, if you got extra, let me know.
Yeah, well, I'll try deal with my wife on that one. She'll send you me before she sends you that sanitizer, I promise you.
So,
So,
Raul,
Stores again, so.
yeah, Raul, what about you? And we'll add another piece of the puzzle into here. Both PPE, hand sanitizer, were you taking any temperatures taken or anything like that? And then also we'll add in about the course itself. We're aid stations out on the course for your event.
Yeah, it's not hoarding if you're stocking up, right? On wipes.
So only hoarding if you're selling it.
That's right. Yeah, so Texas, Florida, California are special. We're back up again, and just last week and this week, the Dallas and Tarrant County just are now requiring face coverings for all businesses to go into a business. So we're gonna have to look at that now that it's a requirement, and we do have an event scheduled for August 1st. It's our own event that we're putting on at our local park here. So we're using RunSignup's corral tool to schedule start times, and we did plan on a packet pickup, but now with the increase of new cases, we might just go to the race day dynamic pickup and go run scenario. And maybe even mail your shirt, but we'll see where we are August 1st. But definitely we are prepping our staff with face masks, gloves, sanitizers. We're getting ready for all of that for, the cross country season up here. We spoke to UIL, the governing body for high school athletics, and 3 weeks ago, they were all full steam ahead for the fall and cross country meets. So we'll see what happens in August. August 13th, I think, is our first cross country meet, and we've got basically the same schedule as last fall regarding our cross country. And road racing wise, it's kind of, that one is still up in the air. We're about 50-50 on our schedule on road races. And you did mention about services being different, I guess. We had a couple of events we've renewed where you have your results center. People can walk up to a kiosk and see the results, and not anymore. I think those are obsolete until way later.
Yeah, text message, email.
So we had a discussion on that. Basically, that all results are online and sent to you on your phone, or basically look at it on your phone. And awards, it's up to the event on what they want to do with the awards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just Chris, if I can interject something, and I think Raul made a good point, is I think if you're putting these events on, you have to have your plan A, your plan B, your plan C, and you have to have best case, worst case scenarios. I know when this first hit, we had a plan where we were just going to have people register. We're going to close registration down 3 days before the event. We're going to mail them their bib numbers, mail them their shirts, mail them everything, so they can just show up and run. And I think you need to have that flexibility of, I've been dealing with our local turkey trots. I had a couple Zoom meetings yesterday, and I'm like, well, what will November look like? Who knows? And so you have to have your business as usual plan, and then your modified plan, and then your worst case scenario. And I think it's important, as I told them, to put out those plans and let people know that, hey, this is what's going to happen. I think people are understanding, as long as you're not selling them something they're not going to get. And I think the more you can think down the line and address the different scenarios and let people know what they're going to be getting, the better off most races are going to be.
Yeah. So Amanda, how about your event, or events, plural?
We've been, at least in the way of staff are required to wear masks or face coverings. So we just purchased buffs to make sure that we had enough that we could provide every staff member with them, including any of our weekend help besides our full-time staff. We recommended that athletes wear face coverings to packet pickup, but obviously discouraged running with them on, especially because we're on a grass trail that just holds the humidity and it's crazy hot, of course. And then with sanitizer and wipes and stuff, that's all over the place. So inside, outside the bathrooms, packet pickup, hanging out by the finish line. And it's kind of like the same thing that Todd said. We're just trying to keep everybody moving throughout, less standing around, less crowding, and the parking lots.
Cool. And Todd, do you have anything else to add to that side? I'm just trying to keep it going in circles so everybody gets to. I keep adding things on to the question.
I found that, you know, to stop the congregating, once you taser one person, everybody's happy.
No one wants to be there.
You might want to check your local law enforcement with that, but you know. We joked about that, having a staged tasing to get everybody to pay attention, but you know, as far as the safety stuff, like, so you can do whatever you want. It just, you know, I think you have to plan for not the 99% of the people that are going to follow suit and do what they're supposed to. It's the 1%, you know, it's that lowest common denominator that you have to plan against. Because as we've been trying to tell all of our events, and anybody that's asked me, I said, you really, one black eye, one, you know,
exactly.
one video, one picture of people standing around and hugging at finish lines and stuff. And the local government will not think twice to shut you down and never let you go. So that's kind of big, our big concern. I have a race that we were supposed to time this weekend that I just I pulled our contract because the way that they're approaching it, I said, I don't think this is safe, and I don't want to have my name on it. I don't have my company be involved in it because I don't want to be guilty by association. So just, you know, caution, and is kind of been our mantra.
Yep. Kind of going back to what you had mentioned about plans, having multiple plans. One of the first things we did is more or less put together like a full-time task force type deal that we went through all of our events and looked at them of how can we make them safer, right? So if it's an out and back course, how can we eliminate that? If it's a tight packet pickup area or a start line, how can we change that? So I've kind of been using the same exact approach when talking to other race directors, supported work, to more or less convince them of, hey, this is the best way to do it. And if you're, you know, if you're interested in having one mass start line, yeah, we're probably not going to be involved.
Yeah, well, we have, what I tell our race directors is, because I get a lot of, oh, I don't think that's going to be a problem. And so I always say, well, do you have a crazy neighbor or a crazy relative that's been in their basement with a shotgun on top of a case of water since this thing started? Do they think it'll be a problem? Because those are the people we're worried about. So, and Amanda, I don't know how you have done it, but like I said, we've had, our biggest challenge is getting venues to commit and then stay committed. We just announced, I'm wearing our 1 mile, this is a race that we put on for our store every year. We have Valparaiso University right behind our store, and we usually run through there for this event, and you know, we put it out there, they approved it, and so we started advertising it, and all of a sudden we got the email yesterday that, oh no, somebody can't do it. And so now we're looking for another, I think we've secured another venue because we had option A, B, and C. And so I think that's the other thing, that if you're going to put on an event, you really have to plan on, okay, what happens, our first event, 10 days out, all of a sudden they pulled the permits. So you have to have, like I said, it's a strange world we're all living in now. And so it's, you know, plan A, plan B, plan Q, plan Z, plan double Z. So.
We've had
a number of people have asked, I'm going to just jump in real quick about event sizes, and just to get this out there, most of the event sizes that are going on, I mean, some of them are small, you know, 20 to 50 people. Others are, when we say large is very relative these days. We might be talking about a couple hundred. By the end, you know, we might chat a bit more about, you know, looking forward and what, you know, what multi-thousand person races look like. But realistically, at this point, we're probably not going to get into that heavily for those of you listening, only because, I mean, what happened in New York Marathon this week. I mean, like, there's no point in us discussing it right now because nothing's going the opposite direction. Nothing's coming back right now in the larger event field. So right now we've got to focus on what is being successful, what we do have, and kind of how to scale those procedures up so that, because it's not going to go from Steve's 20-person neighborhood 5K to Steve's 5,000-person marathon. There's going to be a lot of steps in between.
I think
more
what's
than
key is that it's currently non-zero. Like,
right.
Going from
Yeah.
zero to non-zero, and I think that the baby steps, and I really applaud Todd for taking his company away from a potentially dangerous situation. And I really hope that type of mentality spreads. That's the kind of virus we want out there. Smart thinking, people that don't want to be associated with events that are going to really hurt things. Because like what Chris was saying, this stuff is not immediately going to turn into huge business again. And I think it's the smaller events, maybe not quite as small as mine, but the ones that my panelists here with us are doing, that we're going to find the things that work and the things that don't work. So when race directors come to us, we're going to say, we've tried that, and here's how it didn't work. And we've tried that, and here how it doesn't scale. Or we tried that, and here's how it does scale. And this is what we can do for you and make it safe so that our name can be put on it, like Todd was saying. So.
Yeah. So in terms of, let's see, we've got some other questions about wave starts versus open. I know people have used both practices. For those of you using wave starts, are you focused more on seeding? We've kind of had a bunch of different ways of timers kind of come back and chat about this on other Zoom calls that we've done. Some timers and race directors are saying, hey, let's put the age groups together, so it's more of a race for that age group. Is it more of a seeding by estimated finish time, or are you letting them self-seed so that the families can run together so that there's less people around for any extended length of time? So I'll pass that. I think we'll start with you, Steve, and then we'll go back around again. Thoughts on that?
We did the rolling start, and again, the thought was that keep it open as long as possible and let people go when they're comfortable. We've looked into the corral aspect or doing wave starts. I can't get my head around one solution over another one. The several that you just kind of laid out there, all of them have their benefits. Having people, based on estimated finish time, they can just lie. So I don't know if that's going to help us, especially if they do want to run with their family. So of the several things that I've considered, that family one may work. So here's a group of people that they're going to come together. Some of them may be living together, right? So they can actually gather, right? Because they're already together. So that may be something to consider going forward. I really like the idea of the rolling start. For me, mentally anyway, it's a matter of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And to me right now, not doing races is not acceptable. So that's off the table. We need to find a way to go forward. So the next thing is, here's a 12-hour event for 30 people. Well, that's not acceptable either, but it's a non-zero, and I'd rather do that. And I think that we need to maybe take away, well, I have to pay a lot of staff. I think your staff is just dying to take some money from you, even if it's the same pay for a longer period of time, just to get out there and make something, because again, it's a non-zero value. So I think the rolling start is what I'm going to push going forward for a lot of these smaller events, so that they can come at their leisure. And even if they want to come as a group, like, family comes, 4 or 5 people want to come together, just start together. We're here. We're going to play music, and we'll, grab a mic, hey, have a good race, that kind of thing, and try to make it as close to their normal experience as we can. I like the rolling start until I can figure out a better corral that'll work for these style events.
Yeah, Raul, what do you think about all of that?
Yeah, so you really got to look at the event and be ready to use all three: an open start, corral assignments, and waves. And really, we have another open race that's July 26th from 6:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. That's and you can pick your time, what time you want to go run. Mm-hmm. Everyone's going to pick 6:30 to 8:30, but yeah, it's open. And then I think you have to change the term from corral to wave. So it's I think I was talking to one of our large, probably our biggest weekend event of the year. And, we're like, okay, if this can actually happen in February of 21, how are we going to set up the start? And instead of corrals, where we assign corrals based on pace and from fastest to slowest, we were looking at letting basically that first wave, 8 minutes and faster, go first, and then everybody else is a mixed wave. And it turned, from 8 corrals to probably about 16 waves. So we can have a minimum or maximum of 500 per wave if we had the same amount of in-person participants. So I think you've got to look at the type of event and be ready to use all of them. And like Steve said, it's like, yeah, something better than nothing. And if I'm going to leave the start open for 8 hours, I'm fine with that. We have the technology. It's not hard. I can sit at home and watch it. I know I can tell.
Or the
There's nothing else on TV.
Or let Megan go run, and I can go pick up Papacitos. This is what happened at Global Running Day. She ends up winning the race. So yeah, I think all of them will fit. The larger the event, obviously the more detail and how many waves you got to have, and communication is key.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree with Raul. I think it's a combination of all of them. I think depending on the site, depending on the size of the event, you're going to have to kind of modify. I don't think there's one right answer. It's going to vary. For us, we're kind of doing a bit of a hybrid for all of our events. People are selecting a wave time, but then within that wave time, it's kind of a rolling start. And that seems to be going really well. And right now, I would say we're very conservative with the number of people we're allowing in those waves, so that even with then, you don't have any crowding at pack and pickup, any crowding at the start line, because those waves the time of the wave is so long, plus the small number of people that you have within that.
That's a good idea.
Gotcha. Yeah, Todd?
Okay, man, I'm gonna give you the one right answer. I'm just teasing. One thing that we don't call them waves or corrals. We've been calling them starting time slots, because it truly is that. It's, you can start anytime in this window, or starting time windows, so people understand that they don't have to be there. There's not a horn that's going off with every wave. And I think waves typically people associate with triathlons, where you're in the water with everyone, and so that's the terminology we've been using. And I don't know that there's a right answer. We've been doing it with the starting time slots. And again, not so much for the start line, but for getting people in and out of the park, in and out at registration. And I think if they have to sign up, I mean, we had our last race, we had 50 spots open each time slot. So if you wanted to run, and it was a hot day, Saturday. So if you wanted to run early, you better be one of the first 50 to register, or you took what you got. We've not had to enforce. We say that if you don't start at your appropriate time, that you may get disqualified. We haven't had to do that. We certainly have the technology if people are starting in the wrong waves to do that, but it's all been pretty good so far. Our next race is going to be, because it's so small, we're just gonna have a rolling open start. There's not gonna be any start times. It's just gonna be, the 5 mile will start from this time to this time. The 10 mile will start from this time to that time, and we're gonna see how that goes. Our 1 mile challenge has always been age group waves. So it's always been kids racing against their age group. So we're going to leave that and see how that goes. And so it's, I think, a constant experiment. Like, so when our first one went, we were super conservative with the numbers. And when we saw, okay, we can expand this, we can expand it a little more, we can expand it a little more. And so I think it's important that everybody give feedback on what's been working, so that we can all kind of get real world experience. I mean, everything, in theory, communism works in theory, but in actual application, maybe not so much. So I think it's, it's just kind of a learning process as we go and see. And again, I've shifted my focus to the start line, or from the start line to how are we getting people in and out of the park? How are we getting people to pick up their packets? I think that's where the greater concern is going to come. It's not once they hit the start line. Again, our start line is corralled off. Once you enter into that starting corral, you go. And our rules say, you get in there, you're ready to run. You're not switching out your earbuds, you're not stretching. that's all done out somewhere else. But once you enter that corral area, you go. For our open starts, where it's basically the start line's open for a half hour, we're going to have a corralled start with entrances. So almost like if you're going to Menards and you're waiting in line to check out, before you get in that thing, you know, we'll have lines with X's where if you have to wait to get into the corral, you stand 6 feet apart. But once you're in there, you go. So we'll see how that goes. But it's you know, an unbelievable learning process right now for everybody.
Absolutely. When there are a number of people that are race directors on the call right now and not necessarily timers. And so I do want to just define a couple things for folks that might not be as used to some of these terms. Corrals and waves can be used interchangeably. It's not, I mean, they might have specific definitions, but in our industry, realistically, you're talking either one. And in most scenarios pre-COVID, when you started talking about corrals or waves, it was for larger events and triathlons where groups of people started at different times. So like maybe an age group started 4 minutes later, and so everyone had a separate gun time. So they'd, you know, one group of people started at 7 a.m., the next wave or the next corral might have started at 7:03. And so their actual gun time, everyone in that group had a start that was 3 minutes later than the first group. The time trial start, which is what a lot of, you know, time trial bike races or pool swims, that's where one person goes at a time. Their time doesn't start until they cross the mat, or maybe they have a specific start time that's entered in. And then when everyone keeps bringing up these open times, that's where it's quite literally, when you cross the mat, you might have like a segment of time, maybe a 30-minute window to go in, but your time doesn't actually start until you cross the starting mat. So for those of you that are race directors, I apologize, I probably should have outlined that before getting into starting procedures, but that's what some of the terminology means. And if you are a race director and not a timer, and you hear what these guys are saying, and like, you know, that's an awesome idea, we want to implement that thing, you do need to talk to your timer, period. Like, hard stop. Do not just say, we're going to do this thing, and then tell your timer the day before. That's going to go poorly. So definitely begin conversations with your timers as to, you know, protocols and what you want to implement on race day. I know a number of people on here have already mentioned, you know, we won't work with people if they're just going to be kind of take a laissez-faire attitude about how the starting or finishing or whatever sequence is going to go. So definitely start those conversations. So another couple of questions for everyone. One, are you charging more for the extra work you're doing? And then on that same vein of kind of paperwork, have you added in COVID text into your contracts with your contracted events and or your race waivers? Are you adding that into your participant waivers? So kind of a three-part is COVID text in your race waiver. Is it in your contract with your event? And are your prices changing because of the extra work that you're having to do? So Steve, I'll let you kick this one off.
Okay, we are actually in the process of redoing our contract and the waiver text for any events that we have coming forward. Right now, there's really nothing. So we have some things in the hopper for later in the year that we want to start implementing those things and, you know, covering things like deposits. And, you know, if the government officials say it's a no-go, you know, how are we going to manage a deposit in those cases? So we're starting to put that into contracts now. And as far as charging more, so one concern I have is, yeah, I might need to, especially if we're going to have a 12-hour 5K. You know, it's obviously going to impact staff costs and things of that nature. But elevating that cost might dissuade people from even wanting to do it in the first place. So I'm kind of torn. Additionally, I don't want to lower costs in an effort to entice people to go ahead and give it a try, because now we're setting a new threshold that will not be maintainable going forward. We will come through this, and we need to go back to whatever that new normal is going to be. So I think we should be putting something in there to cover some of these additional steps, even if we don't charge it. I think we should put it in as a price to say, hey, look, this does cost something. And if you want to have your event, be prepared to pay more. And I think people will appreciate that, even if you wind up coming down from that saying, but you know what, we want to do this together and go forward. I just want you to know that this doesn't come at no cost. There is some charge associated with it, and whether we choose to absorb it or not. You need something to come down from. And I think by putting it there, it calls attention to the efforts that we're making to make this safe for you.
Good points. Raul?
Definitely looking at adding the COVID disclaimer, I guess, in our current events that we have up and running, and reworking the contract. We had a cancellation policy in our contract, and it was kind of hit and miss which contracts actually got that, got it in there. So now we're going through and making sure they're all in there. And I don't know if we need to be specific COVID in our cancellation policy on the contract, but and I guess in terms of pricing, I mean, events are in the same boat, right? And you're trying to kick off as well with I don't know, with the runners. Are they coming? Are they gonna show up? We don't know until it happens. So we want to be flexible on our pricing and just kind of make it benefit everyone, so we can actually have the event and support everyone. So hopefully we're really on the other side, and any new partners or existing partners still want to come back and say, yeah, we were there through the thick of it, and we're going to stay here. So we want to work with everyone as much as possible and just make it reasonable for everybody. I mean, so it's not a flat answer, but it's just going to make sense for everyone. If it doesn't make sense, then I guess you don't do it. But I go back to Steve and what Steve says, right? Who wants zero? I mean,
What do you guys?
Let's see, April, May.
Yeah, for sure. Amanda, how about you guys?
We definitely learned really early on in this that our event contracts were rather gray when it came to deposits and cancellations and what those fees might be. So we did rework that pretty quick just to make it more clear, and we're very fair to our customers, but wanted to make it more easily understood, so there was less of that gray area and less exchange back and forth about how much work we've put in and what they owe us. In the way of waiver language, to my knowledge, we haven't changed a ton, but we do have signage out at our events that's, the same signage that you see everywhere now of, if you're feeling sick, if you have a fever, if you've been exposed, turn around and go home type deal.
Right.
And in the way of cost, kind of like what Steve said, if we're going to be there for a 12-hour start window, and typically the event as a whole is 3 hours, in that sense, we'll have to charge more just because I'm likely paying somebody hourly to be there. You could completely wash away every dollar you're making by, quadrupling the length of the event. But we're not adding any sort of premium because now we're timing in COVID. There's no difference because we've upgraded our technology and we're using different things, and the setup and the layout is different. So I think for the most part, our prices are gonna remain the same. It's just whether or not those events, the duration of the actual event is extending past what we can afford.
Right.
Excellent.
Todd?
On the waiver side, I don't know how everyone else is has their contracts written, but ours have always been very clear that we are providing timing and scoring services and nothing more, and we kind of absolve ourselves from any liability as best we can for any instance. So I think we're pretty protected on that. Same with our cancellation policy. It's pretty rigid and it's pretty airtight. It's a benefit having a son-in-law who's an attorney. we can always soften on it. And I've always, told events, I said, can't think of maybe 2 or 3 that we've actually put it in, we've actually enforced it. And that's only been a case where another timer lowballed us, at 2 weeks out, and then all of a sudden we were out. So we can always, soften on that. And our policy, so I put a policy out to our customers that basically said, if you canceled because of government restrictions, health concerns, whatever, and you refund all your money, we will waive our cancellation fee. If you are keeping the money, then we expect to be paid just like a shirt vendor or an awards vendor or anybody else, if you're keeping your money or making it a virtual race. And that seems to have worked for us fairly well. And I forget, there was a third question in there, Chris, but I forget what it was because I'm at the end.
I think you covered most of it.
Price increases.
Oh, price increases. Yeah, Stephen, to your point, what we do is, because we do a lot of races that we do, we just use gun time, so we don't have to bring out start mats and stuff. This is obviously equipment that we're using. We charge extra for it under normal circumstances because that's equipment that I can't have earning money at another race. Not so much the case now. So what we've been putting is our contract reads what it's going to cost per timing point. And in our invoicing, we just simply show that as a cost and then put, I said, we're fortunate we own a running store. So we put it by way of a sponsorship from the Extra Mile. So we're showing that, or you can do it as by way of a donation, but we're showing that expense, but then showing that, we've included it under this year. So yeah, again, that was our thought. Next year when that was great having these start times, we want them again. Nobody wants to pay for them under the best of circumstances. So that's how we've been handling that. But I think I've seen some timers that have put that, well, we're going to charge more. And I'm like, well, that makes a lot of sense. You will, instead of making half of what you want, you'll settle for nothing of what you want and stay at home. So that doesn't make much sense.
I'm with Steve Zero.
I'm all for the non-zero stuff.
Yeah.
You don't want to give up your services, but obviously we're navigating in some strange waters right now.
Right. Well, and I think to kind of bring what all of you said together, and that is obviously you want a non-zero number in revenue, but at the same time, transparency for elevated cost is likely like the best policy there. So Todd is showing that on the invoice as a discount, whatever donation, what have you. In terms of personnel cost, which is basically the only variable cost with a longer time, or theoretically one of the only variable costs that you're going to hit, letting them know, like, this is our hourly rate and we're not trying to charge you more. This is what we are going to be charging per staffer that we have out there. This is how many staffers we anticipate out there, and this is how much more we're going to have to charge over your normal 3 or 4 hours that we were going to be out there. And I think that equates to everyone understanding it's not that you're cashing in on this. I don't think anyone is cashing in, at least not in our industry, on non-virtual.
I did have an event ask me, do you still want, or why can't we have our deposit back if it's a pandemic? Like, it's different than, the tornado on race day, I guess.
Like a force majeure?
So I mean, there was a discussion there on those kind of differences, but it seems like if your policy, the cancellations policies in there, and everybody's agreed to it, you can fall back to that.
Well, Raul, when they asked me that, I'm like, did you have to pay your mortgage? Because I had to pay my mortgage because of the pandemic. So, again, if they give the money back, I'm never going to put an event. Most of our events benefit some good cause. We're never going to put an event in the red. But if they're keeping the money, then yeah, I'm going to expect to be paid, my cancellation fee or keep my deposit.
Right. So we've had a number of other questions that kind of revolved around, and this is going to be a general topic for discussion, and that is permitting, working with municipalities, and are you keeping your races on the streets? Yeah, exactly, Todd. Are you keeping races on the streets with elongated race times? Because most municipalities are not going to be too keen on whereas, hey, we're going to close down this road for 65 minutes. Now you want to do it for 4 hours.
Mhm.
So kind of are you trying to shift your races to parks, to golf courses, to private land? And what headaches or positive things have you seen with municipalities? And that covers that general genre of question. So we'll start a different place now. Raul, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's all your local climate. So even our little town suburb of Mansfield, when we asked for our date on August 1st, they're like, oh yeah, no problem. And trying to get a permit in Dallas or Fort Worth, it's not going to happen. So especially if you want to be on the road, there's no way you're going to get on the road in the next couple of months in Dallas or Fort Worth and Houston. So if you want to get in a park, go to the local parks department, talk to them, and they're likely to get you on the park, which is what we did. Talking to our larger events for next winter, we're actually looking at changing a marathon course and running a half marathon twice, so we can keep people close, I guess, and monitor them. And it's just less on medical, less on police if we do a loop course for a marathon, a 2-loop course on a marathon. That's all up in the air, but this is kind of different things we're looking at streetwise on permitting, but no one's giving street permits right now in Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston.
Yeah. Amanda?
Yeah, we found the thing that has made it most successful with getting permits is really being detailed in what your plan is for the event, right? So instead of just submitting your map and different things like that, it's very, very detailed site plans, how the flow is going to be. We're recently permitting a swim, and it's providing timing data as to like how soon people could get in the water, out of the water, clear site. Right now, it's been primarily parks that are approving. We do have a lot of lakes in the area. There are a lot of aquathons, a lot of open water swims. And that has an advantage, right, of being in a lake. You can extend that out a little bit longer. We do have one race in the middle of July that they're permitted for a street event. It's going to be one of those situations where it's all right turns to keep the traffic down and only close one lane. But for the most part, I think we'll see everything shift to a park and a naturally closed course, because you're just, as a race, you're not going to be able to afford the additional EMS and police costs, and the city may or may not even have the resources or want to do that.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah, we're seeing the same. I mean, we've been sticking primarily to parks, golf courses, anything that's naturally closed. Getting the permit seems to be the easy part. Keeping the permit seems to be the hard part. So I would, I do a lot of politicking to get it approved, and I keep politicking. And our one event that was going to get canceled, I got the heads up from a guy I knew that I was on the park board that let me know in advance, so we could kind of get a little bit of preemptive strike on that. But here's something you have to think about, because even if you're trying to go on roads or if you're crossing roads, you're doing it for an extended period of time. And I had one race director say, well, they have across an intersection that's not super busy. But I said, you're not going to be able to shut that intersection down for 3 hours. And they thought was, well, why do I need to worry about that at all? Well, how's it any different than somebody go out and running on their own and out for a training run and crossing that intersection? I said, well, you're giving them an incentive to go across that road because you're timing them, because you're scoring them, and there's an award. And so if they think they can beat that yellow light and get plugged, you're going to be in trouble. So I think if you're talking about long durations, 3-4 hours, your easiest thing is in a closed park. But again, we're looking at, can we bring those times down? Do we have to have start lines open for hours? Can we do it in half hour, or how quickly can we move these things around? And it's just going to be a work in progress to see I think we were looking at some numbers the other day. I think we feel we could safely get almost 2,000 people through an event and do it in less than 4 hours for a 5K if you do it right. It's going to be a constant learning curve as we go.
Yeah.
If you're a larger event working with the city, this looks like there's a task force on all the big cities here in Texas that are, that are on the event side, and have everyone from police to health department to permitting all on the task force and the event to try and plan, what it's going to look like in the winter time. So, and maybe even look at split one day of 5K, 10K half full to 2 days, Saturday, Sunday, 5K, 10K, and then a half full, or splitting it up on Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, we've even thought about, Raul, for some of our events, if it's in a park and it's a closed course, having, putting a limit of 400 people on our event. And then if we reach that limit, either offering a Sunday event the next day or doing it later on in the day, and merging those results into one race or keeping them separate. I'm looking at the questions here, and I get this a lot with the wave starts or with the time trial starts is, can you publish your results, and is it fair so people can see how fast other people went? I'm like, well, I come from a cycling background. When you had a bike time trial, the results were up there, and I don't know about anyone else, but I always just ran or rode as hard as I could all the time. So I don't know that I ever said, well, I don't have to try too hard today because so-and-so's in. So, but yeah, anyway, I was
Chris was in.
Questions.
Yeah. Steve, have you had much experience?
A little bit. After our event, we did have a conversation with some of the city officials here in our town, and they made it very clear that right now there are no permits, and that's going to be a while for that to happen. I think, Chris, earlier you mentioned that a lot of race directors don't understand the jargon that timers tend to use, but race directors understand races a lot more than city officials do. So when we try to explain to them about rolling starts and all these protective measures on how to manage packet pickup and things like that, some of them, they just don't understand that. It's just not their wheelhouse. It's not what they do. So my biggest obstacle in dealing with them has been to tell them, look, we have measures that we're putting in place to allow this to be done safely. We understand why there's restrictions and the big hard no. So after I explained some of that, they came back and said, well, the parks, you might have something there. And much to what Amanda and everyone else was saying, that, going to the parks, the golf courses, private properties, I think that's where we're going to be successful. But they did come back right away and say, any EMS, police, fire, ambulance, any of that, don't count on it because we can't allocate it. And I get it, because they're needed to deal with potentially bigger things than what we're likely to put on. So my only concern about doing events going forward in terms of city and community issues is the things that we normally take for granted, having some paramedics there just in case. It's going to be hard for us to get them because, quite honestly, they're dealing with quite a lot of other things that are, arguably more important. Obviously, I say arguably because it's very important to all of us on this call. But in terms of the scope of the community, our 5K, our 10Ks, or whatever, they're not as high as the safety of the people that live in the community. And I agree with that, actually. So. Right. But as far as city officials, down in the Miami-Dade area, there are some permits being slowly filtered out. But it's like they're writing everything in pencil. And I think Todd had mentioned that it's very liquid right now. They're yeah, we'll do it, but we're going to pull it back at a moment's notice. Where earlier, I'm not sure who actually said it, having the plan A, B, C, D, Q, X, Y, Z, right, all the way down through the alphabet. I think that's the only way we're going to go forward. And if we show the city officials that we do have a plan B and a plan C and a plan D, that look, we want to hold this in-person event, and here's our plan on making it safe. And if that's not comfortable, here's our contingency plan to keep it safe, even if we can't gather in this larger group, smaller groups, or however we want to phrase it. I think if we show them that we just want to do something for the community to get us moving again, that we may get some traction. They may start signing those papers in some ink. So, yeah.
One thing that we found in going and trying to get permits and stuff is drawing analogies to people. You're right. People don't understand how races are put on, and they just think it's the vision of a race is people standing shoulder to shoulder on a start line, And so their initial thought is no way. And
Right.
so you have to spell out what you're going to do, and then you have to draw. I found in our experience drawing analogies to how we are just like any other business, and we drew analogies to a golf course. Well, wait, you're letting people sign up for for tee off times and show up 4 or 5 at a time and tee off and go on the course. That's what we're talking about. And for packet pickup, we said, hey, go to Menards. There are 5 checkout lines with X's and people waiting, and that's what we're doing. And so I think you have to kind of, really, really force that thought process. And I say force because sometimes they don't want to listen. The easiest thing to say is no. And the easiest way to never be wrong is to never do anything. And a lot of people have taken that stance. So you almost have to take them kicking and screaming. And I know for one of our events, I mean, I said, I have a son-in-law who's an attorney, and we were throwing around words like restraint of trade and the fact that we had advertised and loss and damages, and to get people to at least stop shaking their head no for a second to go, well, wait a minute, let's look at this on its merit. So that's the battle we're all facing right now.
Mhm.
Yeah, agreed. Yep.
So one thing that I do want to make sure we cover. I think you guys will never be able to guess why, and that is the race day suite tools that you guys use. We're gonna plug it at some point, but in all honesty, I mean, the funny thing is you guys have all kind of brought things up just sporadically throughout, discussing a lot and I've just been kind of monitoring a number of the questions, and I group them together with a, if we get 3 or 4 of the same type, I've kind of given you a general question about that topic. And I know with our test events that we did, in terms of the suite products that we were using, we timed with both Race Director and Race Day Scoring, and we were able to, use the check-in app, use RaceJoy, use dynamic bib assignment, send out texts and emails. So all of these live, all of these while people are still registering. And so I just wanted to get your take and what tools you were using, so that everybody had a clear understanding of, these are at your disposal, and what are you using and how are you using them? So we'll start with Amanda this time.
All right. We were previously, I guess you could say, run score timers. We've been slowly dabbling into race day scoring over the course of the past year or 2, whatever it's been. But now we are all in on race day scoring. We've done dynamic bib assignment for years, so that's nothing new to us. But right now you need more than ever, you need like that all-in-one service. And so we're going to constantly push race directors towards dynamic bib assignment. And if these long start times continue like we think they're going to, you need it, because you need to be able to be scoring while people are still checking in. And beyond that, we're doing the same thing with waves, corrals, whichever you want to call them, to make sure we're still capturing gun times. So if you have those little 10-minute segments, although there are only a few number of people going across that start line and the likelihood that you're going to miss a read is small, we still want to have that backup timing data. So that's a huge thing that with race day scoring, how it sinks in, that I don't have to worry about any messy data. I just get to basically plug and play when it comes to that. And then I think the bigger thing for us is the push from any sort of paper results, any sort of kiosks, receipt printers, anything that involves either a athlete touching something or a volunteer touching something, or the massive crowd of people that gather around a wall with paper results. We want to go away from that, and the capabilities that RunSignup and Race Day Scoring have in terms of notifications and the customization of the finisher certificate, the text, the emails is massive for us, because we are pushing everyone to sign up for result notifications. You're going to get them instantly. Your results are going to be posted online. You're not touching anything, and it's faster and cleaner and can be posted on Facebook a lot faster than your paper results can. So, I mean, it's been perfectly seamless for us.
Cool. Todd?
Yeah, we still use Race Director, so we can do pretty much everything that people are using race day scoring. So if there's some old school, farts like me that still use Race Director, you can do all of it. The race day scoring has been it's invaluable. The check-in, dynamic bib assignment check-in, the text messaging and emailing of results. We use the live leaderboard, and we post that URL on our website so people can go and look throughout the day to see how people are finishing. I'm looking for silver linings every day through this, and one of them is finally getting away from paper registrations, telling people they have to register online and register in advance, or register at home before you head to the race site.
On your phone in the car.
Yeah, that has been great. Like I said, the other silver lining is my income tax bill is not going to be nearly what it was last year. So. But yeah, that's how you use those suites. You have the technology there. One thing, if people haven't thought about it, I think most timers videotape their finish line. We have started videotaping our start line, and we have a camera that has obviously a time sync on it. So if we have a missed time, we can go and they can tell us what wave or corral or start window they started in, and we can just buzz back and watch them cross the start line and put their time down. So that's how the technology's there to use. But yeah, the race day suite the corrals are awesome. That's I never really used that setup until now. I don't know if I'll ever not use it, especially for triathlons and stuff. But to be able to have people pick times that they can come in, limit those number of times, and keep the flow in and out of the park, it's just invaluable. So. Yeah, if you're not familiar with it, the good folks at RunSignup are, and they can walk you through it, but you need to start using that.
Yes.
Cool. Steve, what have you been playing with?
The silver lining stuff that Todd has talked about, I'm definitely down with. Several events in this area have never wanted to do any dynamic bib assignment, and now this is one way to say, hey, look, you don't want to have bins of bibs sitting there. Like the ones I have for a race that got canceled sitting next to me. You don't want that, because you don't want a whole bunch of people touching it over and over again. Dynamic bib all the way. So I guess I'm an old fart too, but I'm using Race Director. But for the events that we've done, I've used the race day scoring because that was one of the first ones that kind of made a big deal about being able to do the rolling starts and having that gap factor. And of course, Race Director has it as well. So I did both. Redundancy, I guess, is king. My mentor taught me well. So, we did that. We've been using QR codes for results. So if they don't want texting, they can just scan it with their phone and go right to the results page. We did the same thing for registration when we put a QR code up. So if they wanted to register, there's no paper registrations, scan that, it goes right to the registration page. So we've been taking advantage of all of that. We use RaceJoy for monitoring on the course, so that if we don't want to put a turnaround point, we'll just use RaceJoy and see if they went down there. So things like that are really good from our end, and I imagine that would scale really nicely too, by the way. So the bigger events, that if you don't want to have someone out on the course watching to make sure everyone didn't cheat, you could use RaceJoy and see if they stayed on course. You could replay that later. As a matter of fact, there's an event in July that's the sole reason they can have the event, because we now have some way of tracking them without putting mats down the ground. So that's a big part. And again, in addition to the QR results, we tried the leaderboard, but with 8 hours worth of people, it's like 2 names on there. So it was less exciting. I imagine for bigger events, that'd be really good. But we did have a TV set up that we could do that, or put the RaceJoy monitoring out there so people can see that. And then, of course, text messaging for the results. And all that's managed. What I like about the race day scoring and the RunSignup, compatibility there is they could go ahead and do something on my kiosk computer, and my scoring computer's got the data automatically. So I literally don't have to touch it. And all I have to do is just every so often check to make sure the data's coming in, and I'm good. So it's all very seamless and automatic. If I make a change in race day scoring, it pushes back out to RunSignup automatically. And that syncing of all of that data without us touching anything, either physically or electronically, I like that a lot. It makes my life a lot easier. So for sure. Yeah. I used it all, to be sure, Chris. I used everything.
Yeah. Well, Raul, how about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, ditto what everyone said, except I think I bought my first copy of Race Director in '98. How about you, Todd?
I might be ahead of that still. We started with Run Score, Run Score.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was some time ago.
Right.
On the base,
So,
still wet behind you.
trying to convert to a new scoring software was, sounded really fun for me. But I went in, did all the training, and Global Run Day, started out with Race Director, and it wasn't working at all. So I just copied the race to race day scoring, turned it on, got it connected, and I went for a run. So it was great. The suite of services is awesome. Race day scoring, the biggest piece is being able to use that gap factor.
Yes.
You have to use you can only use that in laps, I think, in Race Director, but we get technical, but the gap factor, and it takes that last start read, and your first finish read. So that's a big piece. I mean, those little things like that will make it, something that you'll want to use or look at. And we are definitely, adding that to our scoring piece. So that, and what everyone else said, the connection, the auto updates, the bib assignments, the results uploads. We've been using that through Race Director the past couple of years. So check-in app, yeah. Results,
Raul,
race day.
Speak for Stephen and I to say thank you all you race day scoring folks for beta testing this for us, and I'm sure we'll be getting over there sooner rather than later.
Go check it out.
Yeah.
I learned
this kind of
a
stuff
long
it's
time ago
mind-boggling.
that the pioneers take the arrows and the settlers get the land. So being doing this a long time, I took a lot of arrows. So I figured with race day scoring, I'll let y'all figure it out, and then we'll jump in later.
There you go.
That's why I do the driveway 5Ks.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Let your neighbors take the arrows.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris,
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw, but I sent you a link with a bunch of questions kind of categorized into different categories. I don't know if you wanted to start bringing up some of the other ones that I have here. I tried to pick off the ones that were already answered, but there's quite a few.
Sure. Yeah, let's see. I think we've gone through some of these, so I'll read through general stuff on here. Let's see. Wave starts. Have any of you guys had to deal with anybody wanting to change their starting time window? And if so, how are you managing that?
Not me.
We did on one of our races. Somebody just showed up late and came up and said, "Hey, can I still race?" And it's a click of maybe 1 or 2 buttons on the back end of RunSignup and race day scoring. It's like 1 button. So we just switched them because that wave was, the later wave was still available. It wasn't full. Switched them and switched in race day scoring, and they went on and ran the race.
Awesome.
Yeah, we've not worried about enforcing it, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say, hey, what up, Matt? I'm gonna leave Avery out. So, but we really haven't. Like I said, our big fear was people abusing it, that they couldn't get into the wave they wanted or the early wave, so they just signed up and figured they'd show up whenever. We've not really seen that, so somebody shows up early, we're like, go, start line's open, go. We don't even put it in waves. The corrals are more to get them there at certain times. If we see it starting to be abused, then we're going to put a thing out that's saying we will enforce these, and if you start at any time other than your assigned time, you will be disqualified. And you can do that, I'm sure, through race day. We can do it through RunSignup and just DQ them. So, but yeah, we haven't, pretty much, if the start line's open, go have at it.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, so we have another set of questions, and again, if one person wants to jump in, we're a little limited on time, and that is on food and water. I think we covered this to some degree in regards to limiting things on course or water stations or food at the finish. From what I've seen from nearly all the calls, Zoom calls, roundtables that I've been on, so I'll kind of take this one, and that is a lot of people are removing aid stations on shorter events, and anything at the finish line is single-use plastics, unfortunately. It's not the best for the environment, but in terms of social distancing and health, water bottles and things that are single-use packaged. So we'll move on to packets and swag. Sounds like 2 parts. Are you giving them out on race day? Are you shipping them out? Or because a number of you guys said, once you get into the the roller coaster line, are they getting their T-shirt and whatnot at that point? Because it sounds like they're running at that point. Or are you mailing these out? And if you are mailing them out, are you doing the fulfillment? In ballpark, what are you paying for that fulfillment? So if anybody feels inclined to pick that one up, it's kind of a good bit of info. But swag at the packet pickup, are you giving it out there? And if no, what are your shipping costs? What are your shipping costs looking like?
So for the first race that we timed, it was a supported event. He did give out T-shirts, but it was the same idea of once you get your bib, you race. So instead, they got their shirts at the end. So their size was marked on their bib at dynamic check-in. And then he just had pre-packaged in buckets, small, medium, large, XL, of their entire goodie bag of, your banana and your water bottle, a medal, and a shirt. For our own events, we actually have had some amazing sponsors that are very interested in being involved. One of our biggest fears was no post-race party. Our sponsor is going to want to be a part of it because, we can't hand out beer at the finish line. You can't have open food. But our sponsors have jumped on board with more of your paper type stuff. So at the end of the event, the athlete is given a bag, a plastic water bottle, like you said, and inside that bag, there might be some sort of power granola bar, whatever. But then it's all sorts of different coupons to local businesses, whether it's a free beer or a $7 credit to Culver's ice cream, different things like that. And when we looked at our sponsor bags, worked out to be like $70 worth of different items that these athletes get. And it was one bag and they walk back to their car, so that's something that they're very happy about. And the second component to that is, all the small businesses in the area have obviously struggled because of COVID. So now what that free coupon beer or that free beer coupon does is I have to go to Hop House to redeem it. And let's be real, most people are going to have more than one beer while they're there. So that's getting business in the door for those sponsors. So it's been impressive to kind of see what that has done. So I think it's going to be important for race directors and race organizers to kind of take that approach to their sponsorships deals, knowing that it's going to be a different vibe at the finish line.
So in just moving some of these along, because I'm seeing we actually have a number of grouped questions on the list that Matt just sent over. Anybody want to throw out a ballpark number on shipping for shirt, bib, and finisher medal? I mean, if you're paying, I don't know if you're doing it in-house or
with tracking about $8.
Well, we have to send it out to do it. It's around anywhere from $5 to $7 if we're paying an outside group to do it. So yeah, that includes postage.
Yeah, we've done a lot of virtual events, and our shipping costs, depending on where it's going and what's in the little mailer bag for USPS, has been anywhere between like $3 and $5.
Yeah. Amanda, are you doing tracking with that, or is that?
Tracking, yeah, it's all through ShipStation.
Okay.
Let's see. Liability and permitting concerns. Sorry, bike races. Do we time bike races? Yes, I think probably most people on this panel have timed a bike race. And in terms of starting, I'm just going to hop on this one to keep it moving. time trial starts or just smaller wave starts are a great way of starting them. I mean, personally, I would limit pelotons, so it would only be time trial riding. Does anybody else want to change my mind sign? You know, like, you know, group rides are not the best
Anybody who's a
idea.
cyclist understands what a draft is. Well, that draft is pulling everything from the front of the pack. So,
Right.
time
So
trial.
if you're doing bike races, go to time trial for now.
Yep.
Sorry, Mike, or sorry, Matt Avery. I know he's one of the bigger cyclists around.
Cyclocross guys.
Yeah. So anybody have any specific toilet procedures for PVE, like wiping things down or anything like that?
You know, Chris, that was one of my biggest concerns when we did our first event, and my wife was the one that said, you know what, when I'm out for a run, and if I have to use a porta-john, I'll use it, and I carry my wipe, you know, my sanitized wipes with me, I'll wipe it down, and so that's kind of a personal thing. I think that's, you know, most people, what we found, take care of that. And one thing that hasn't been brought up, we did get asked a lot, what are we doing for spectators? And my answer was, what should we do for spectators? They're not my concern. If, you know, if they're standing on the side of the road, they should be practicing safe distancing. It's just like if they're on the sidewalk going from store to store. So that's kind of my answer to our local officials. I'm like, that's on you guys. What do you do right now for people walking down the sidewalk?
Well, anybody have any negative feedback that they've received?
Negative
From
feedback.
timing races or footing races? Somebody asked if there's been any negative feedback. And Todd, while we're getting to that, we do have a secondary question to see your dog. I'm not joking. Someone actually put in where they want to.
And be thankful the parent hasn't chimed in, because she says a few things that probably are not good for public consumption. So.
I'm sure she picked it up from someone
all day, so she's heard when she hears race director, she may not say some nice words. So.
So, any negative feedback that you guys have received?
Nothing specific, no.
No.
Zero.
Okay.
Zero. And I will tell you that that's been the greatest thing of all of this, the silver linings, is the runners, when you put on your events, they are truly grateful that you're putting it on. And anybody that's directed a race, grateful runners sometimes aren't easy to find, but it's just been, everyone has been, from the community to the community leaders to the runners, everyone is just happy that we're doing something and we're doing it safely.
Yep.
I think that answers Raul's question earlier, is will the runners come? I think absolutely they will. If you provide a safe environment, they will come and support you. I don't want to say I guarantee it, because, you know, his relative's a lawyer and I don't want to make that promise, but I think if you can demonstrate that we can do this safely, I think that putting a cap is going to be required, because you might exceed your expectations.
So final question for those of you that have been in parks, because we are 3 minutes over at this point, and that is any park concerns with other people in the park? So other people walking, running, cycling, with you already have guidelines in place for your event. Are you also having to deal with those same guidelines on I don't want to say global, but like a park-wide scale for people that, kind of like the spectator side of things, that do count towards the total number of people in the area? So have your parks that you've worked with, have they given you have there been any headaches with folks that are out there not involved with your event?
Now, our first event, no, go ahead. Sorry, Amanda.
I was gonna say, we haven't had any issues. We've just done a lot in the way of race in progress, runners on trail type signage, just to let people know that, like, hey, there is an event going on right now.
Yeah, it's our first event was on a trail that is pretty well used, and it's, you know, we just went out a couple weeks and saw what it looked like on a Saturday morning, saw that by about 10 o'clock is when it started getting busy. So we had our race earlier. Our first wave was 6 a.m. And while that wasn't ideal, it was our way of making sure that we'd be gone before, you know, anybody got there. I mean, we live in a world of public opinion, and we need our cities and we need our parks and we need everybody to help us. So you just really have to be sensitive to that you're not going to have one person, you know, we live in a world of people getting brave people behind a keyboard saying, "Dear internet, I am so upset." So
right. Absolutely. All right, and the only other two things on here, one is someone's asking about changing from an out and back to a point to point without using shuttles. In my head, I don't think that's physically possible unless your secondary point is 500 yards or a mile away, and you could just get people to walk. So if you're going to a point to point, you're going to have to use a shuttle, and there's no real way around it. And using shuttles at this point is probably something you don't want to do. So consider moving that secondary point closer, so you can maybe have a parking lot in the middle with a start on one side half a mile away and a finish on the other side half a mile away. And then
Quick note on that.
Question. What's that?
Quick note on that is on our run coming up August 1st, 5 mile and 5K. We're starting the 5 mile first, and they're finishing about, I don't know, 200 yards behind the start line. So that is kind of point to point, but separate start and finish.
Right.
In the same area.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the best case scenario there. And then we had one more specific question on, hold on, I'm trying to find it, on USATF. USATF rules for open winners need to be based on gun time. How's that being handled with a rolling start line? And
USATF sanctioning any of these events?
Right.
That's the other question.
Again, we're talking about going from 0.
Right.
And so
I think that goes back to the sandbagging type question too, is like, as much as this is different for us as organizers, this is a different type of racing too.
Right.
You know, so we all have to get adjusted to it, both as race directors and as athletes.
100%. Yep. I agree.
So I think that's, I think we've covered most of it. Matt, do you see anything else that we need to hit on that list? I think we grouped some of those together.
I think we got pretty much everything. Yeah. So unless there's anything else that you wanted to go off of your list, I think we've pretty much answered all the ones that came in.
Yeah, I think we covered just about everything on mine. Do you guys have anything extra that you want to add, share?
No.
Oh,
Still
we still have someone asking for your dog, Todd. They have come back a second time.
Oh, Todd, there's also
He's
one
probably sleeping by now. You know, he's an old dog, so.
Eric Art asks, ask Todd what he really thinks about Illinois.
Eric is my business partner and lives in Illinois, so yeah, we've had some good conversations about coming over across the border.
That's fun. Chris, the only thing I think I would add is that, you know, a lot of people in the industry, in any one of the communities that, you know, people that I can see represent and everyone else that's on the call, they're looking to us to be a positive face. So we can't be doom and gloom. We may be crying in our pillow at night, but when we talk to race directors, when we talk to participants, when we talk to city officials, we need to be confident, we need to be strong, we need to be positive and uplifting, because it's too easy to be sad, right? So let's change that and let's put a good face forward. You know, technology companies like yours have been working really hard to give us tools to allow us to go forward with this. So let's go forward with it. Let's try some things. And there are some concessions. So, you know, the USATF rules may not apply to these events anymore. And some of the things that we'd like to do may not apply anymore, but let's get something going. Let's be positive about this and find a solution. And the last thing I'll say is thank you so much for including me in this. I'm honored to be in such good company. So.
Yeah, I think just real quick, and I said it with the Alan Jones Award, is I think it's important for all of our officials to know, and I truly believe this, that running is an essential business. It means a lot to a lot of people. It's a great way to get out and get physical exercise. It's a great way to have recreation that can be safe. And it's keeps them physically fit, keeps them mentally fit, helps them deal with stress, and everybody needs that right now. So it's just incumbent on us to share that with our officials and have any runners in your area to share that with your officials that, hey, this is important. It's as essential business as anything. I said the liquor store and the smoke shop across from our running store stayed open during the pandemic. So I don't know how we're not essential as well.
We have wrestling in Florida. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. So.
All
Another
right.
note is to, you know,
well, thank you guys so much for joining us.
Don't forget.
Oh. What's that?
Everybody, go to texasvirtualchallenge.com.
There you go.
There you go.
Put the plugs in. Amanda, you got a plug you want to throw in at the last minute?
Race across Wisconsin. There you go.
There you go. Todd, what's your plug you want to throw in here?
Hey, my plug is let's all fight racism in every form it takes. And that's all.
There
I
you
have.
go.
Ditto.
Steven.
Let's all boats rise when the tide comes in. Let's work together.
That's true.
Right on. Well, all four of you, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for all the questions from the attendees. We had really great engagement. And yeah, if you guys need anything, this will be recorded, or this has been recorded. We will be sending it out. And yeah, hope you've enjoyed the virtual symposium. We still have some other things going on. So yeah, if you're bored at 4:30, I think it is, I'm hosting a happy hour with Chris. So I'm gonna drink a beer and tell jokes, I guess. So, all right, well, you guys take care, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye.